sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it yet. Just go forward. So what do you need to do? How do you stand out? So what you need to do is be that person that's different and is bigger than you think. Rise from the ashes and fly like the phoenixes that you are. So welcome everybody and hello. This is Andrew David Blake Newbar's partner program, and we are talking about learning as adults. We're going to talk about some examples. We're going to talk about how to do it better. We're going to talk about a gentleman that some of you may or may not be aware of, but I want to kind of dive into that. And so we're talking about, reading. We're talking about listening. We're talking about audio visual. Some people learn by doing. The key element is understanding who you are and how you function and how you learn. With that said, let me rewind a second. How many of you guys have ever heard of Josh Waitzkin? Has anyone heard that name? No?
No.
Has anybody heard of the book or the movie, Searching for Bobby Fischer?
Yes.
Okay. So Searching for Bobby Fischer is a movie based off of a book written by Josh Waitzkin's dad. Now, the actual Bobby Fischer, it was a chess prodigy.
Mm-hmm.
During the mid to late 1900s. He died actually just a decade or two ago. He was around at the turn of the century, turn of the 21st century. Child prodigy, became a chess master all over the world. Defeating people, was one of the few Americans to defeat Russian chess masters during a time when, from World War II up until the Cold War, every world champion in chess had been Russian. He was one of the first guys to go in and beat them. Bobby Fischer himself, other than being a chess champion, wasn't really a great dude. You can go in and look. He was kind of he was an anti-Semite. He cheered when 9/11 happened. Like, just not a great guy. But chess champion, amazing there. Well, Josh Waitzkin was a young man who, in the book, Searching for Bobby Fischer, was essentially the search for the next one kind of thing, right? Looking for another child prodigy in chess. And so here's this young American boy who, when he was 6, 7 years old, his mom's taking him around. They get to, Washington Park in New York. Is it Washington Square Park? Someone know off the top of their heads? I can't remember. I've walked through it a few times, but it's where a lot of people, and you've seen it in movies, you may have seen it elsewhere, where you have chess players, and some of them are kind of chess hustlers, street chess players. Like, they'll sit down, you can pay, they'll bet how fast can they beat you. They'll beat you in so many moves. They'll give you extra time, all sorts of stuff. So anyway, he was introduced to chess there, started learning, went to school, became a chess champion. By the time he was a teenager, he had become a world champion. And his father wrote this book that then later turned into a movie. So prodigy, chess champion, oftentimes people say, well, it's because they're a genius, and because they're so focused on chess and the learning of chess, they become these prodigies, right? A lot of them are very kind of close in. That's about all they do their whole life. Well, he got to the point where he says that he not so much lost the love, but he walled himself off almost from the love of the art of chess, and for a time only thought about winning, right? And so he stopped, and he hasn't played chess in years. What a lot of people don't know is, after that, he went out and learned a type of martial arts that was, I kind of like Tai Chi. It's pushing hands, and karate, and a mixture of a couple of different things. And he became a 5-time world champion in that. And then he got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he's now a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And he opened a gym in New York with a gentleman who's widely regarded as one of the best grapplers in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu ever, a guy named Marcelo Garcia. And so they own this school, and that guy's a multiple-time world champion in jiu-jitsu, and he's a black belt, and they have this business. Now he also does windsurfing, and there's other activities. And one of the things that he started teaching now is something about the art of learning. because what he's learned is how to learn and how to then apply those learning tactics to who he's trying to become. He didn't hold himself up. So my question to you guys is how do you learn? How do you go about it? What are you doing, right? So there's a couple of key elements. This is, now, Josh Waitzkin is, I'm going to drop this into the Skype group. Most of you guys are in the Skype group already, yeah?
I need to join it.
Okay. So Chris, if you can drop the link in there. Well, I think Janine, he wrote in his Art of Learning, and he's got a nonprofit and other things, but part of it is about the ability to focus. So he talks about learning the macro from the micro. So learning the small things. What I just dropped into the Skype group is an excerpt from the podcast interview that Tim Ferriss did. So again, this is a book, I've introduced it before. It's called Tools of Titan by Tim Ferriss. There you go. David's got the book right in front of him, The Art of Learning. And we can find that, the name of that, and we can give it to you guys later. But what's interesting for me is here's this perspective that I think is fairly unique, where you've got a guy who's been and becoming a world champion in a martial arts requires physical and mental prowess, right? And a level to dedicate yourself to a certain skill and practice and, this, in art. And then you have chess, which is something that most people wouldn't put the two together at all. And then you have business, and he's got the successful business being run. And then you have windsurfing. You have all these other elements. And here's this young man who has mastered each of these things, and he does it through his ability to learn and how he learns it. So he talks about creating empty space, which I think is interesting. So he kind of talks about a lot of us. How many of you guys ever felt like the string that's just pulled too tightly? You feel like you're fraying in the middle, like there's just so much tension going on, you can't handle anything. So he talks about creating empty space, in a sense, creating a little bit of slack in that string. And so you've got an opportunity to, do and be a little bit more in a different manner, right? So lessening the stress, finding the empty space in order to build out the creativity. He talks about, learning the macro from the micro. So instead of learning step by step, he talks about in the interview, talks about when he learned how to play chess. And then when he's teaching Tim Ferriss, the same thing, instead of just teaching the opening moves, which is what a lot of people want, like, just tell me the beginning, show me this here, that, what I need to do. He wipes the board clean, pulls everything off, puts 3 pieces on, and he teaches him strategies on how to finish. Because what happens, and he uses an example of skiing. He went skiing with this world champion, and he asks, what are the 3 most important moves in skiing? And people will talk about the beginning because you're creating momentum and you're getting things started and you're getting your head in the right spot. And others will talk about, the middle, because this is where, you're starting to go through things. And he says, no, it's actually closer to the end. When you're close to the end, it's not as steep, things aren't as crazy, and you're trying to, you kind of let your guard down a little and you're not paying as much attention. See, a lot of us are so focused on the beginning that we don't pay attention to some of the other things. So he talks about the macro and the micro and how to kind of pick that up. He talks about, what I'd like you guys to do is listen. That podcast is about 15 minutes long, the review of it. I'm going to be reading his whole book. And so I'll share my thoughts on that here in a couple of weeks. I'm going to order it. And then I've got a couple of others. But learning is something that can be a double-edged sword. Okay, and I've talked about this a lot. How many of you guys have heard me use the phrase education and execution, and keeping that balanced? Keep yourself learning, but get shit done. It's easy for us to get into this habit of learning, because learning, your brain gets to the point where it starts to love it. It loves new information once you get it used to it. So Are you at the point where your brain is fighting you trying to learn something because you're saying, oh, I'm too old, or I'm this or that, or the other. So learning something is difficult. Once you've programmed the hardware and the software in the brain to accept new information, it turns into that sponge, everlasting, and it's soaking things up. But if you get caught in that world of only learning and never actually doing things, that's where the problem lies. And I feel like at times, as much as I'm doing, I know there are moments when that's what happens to me, right? Where I've read through, I mean, we're, starting June, I've probably read through 60 books at this point this year, right? But I need to put more into place. I need to take some more action. I need to kind of expand some of the books that I'm reading. I need to get into some categories that have nothing to do with things that I've read to this point. Because I want to share more things with you guys, as opposed to the same lessons that I always pop on here and say, I want to be able to bring things in. That's one of the examples that they give, that Josh gives in there as well, is hey, go around, like find things, the ability to take information that may not seem synergistic and find a way to create that connection and allow your brain to create those connections will give you more power in what you're doing than just about anything you can imagine. And what I mean is, you're marketing here, you're going after different niches, you're conversing mostly digitally, but you're conversing with clients online, maybe on the phone. Maybe some of you guys are taking the relationships to that point. Maybe it's the relationships that you have. But if you stay so much in your bubble that you're unwilling to look at other things, you're going to hamper your own growth. Right? And so I think it's an interesting example from Josh, because once he gets into something, he goes deep as opposed to broad, but he masters it, and then he finds something else, and then he finds ways to connect. It may seem contradictory. I don't think it is. It's the power of learning and application. So what are you spending time learning right now, and how are you applying it to make yourself better? How are you applying it to make your business better? How are you applying it to make yourself healthier? What are you doing to improve your relationships, right? Maybe you've got something in your relationships and you're going, I don't know why they're not studying what I am. And there's a disconnect between you and your spouse because you're spending so much time and effort studying something. How about you pick up a book or two on what they really like doing and become an expert at that too? Why not? Right? Push yourself a little bit. Yes, thank you, David. So Josh Waitzkin, it's a fascinating story. I want to wrap the call up. I want you guys to think about how you're learning. Hop into the Skype group. That's a 15-minute, capped version from Tim Ferriss of how that interview went and some key principles there. But look at it and think about, how am I learning? Am I, pigeonholed into one thing? Have I not paid attention to other things? Am I expanding my growth? Am I willing to learn and do more? Figure out where you're at and what you need to do. Tomorrow, we will talk a bit about marketing. We had someone talking about traffic. We've had people talking about headlines and things. So I'm going to get into some content tomorrow. We'll get onto Facebook. We'll look at some people. If you've got a page or a post or anything else that you'd like us to take a look at, send it along to me inside of Skype, and we'll do that. But on that note, go listen to the interview with Tim. If you haven't yet, if you've got a little bit of ADHD, then these books by Tim Ferriss are great because they're short, highlighted. You bounce around from one to another, so they're a lot of fun. Yeah, get out, have an amazing day. Love you guys. Appreciate you being here. Message me with any questions, requests, etc. And we will talk soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye. Sometimes people have what it takes, but they haven't recognized it yet. Go forward. So what do you need to do? How do you stand out? So what you need to do is be that person that's different and is bigger than you think. Rise from the ashes and fly like the phoenixes that you are.